Central Indiana's #1 news source. This is Fox 59 Tonight.
Good day to you. I'm Cameron Riddle. Thank you for joining us here on Fox 59 Now and Fox59.com for special coverage of Redistricting Indiana. This will be a little combo of Fox 59 Tonight and In Focus. I say that because we are here with our very own Dan Spuler as we're covering what's happening on the House floor in downtown Indianapolis as the maps are being debated in the House. Dan, session has begun. What's happened so far today?
So as we replay some of the minute-to-minute coverage from this final vote hearing Friday morning, we're watching right now as this 10 a.m. session gets started. You see right now State Representative Matt Pierce from Bloomington, who's standing up there with a look at this draft map that's been debated all week in the House. And this process could take a little while here as it unfolds here this morning as we recap this morning's minute-to-minute coverage. We're watching here as the Democrats try to make their case against this redistricting bill, House Bill 1032. They'll probably go up one by one, making a lot of comments as Representative Pierce is right now to see if they can at very least, I guess, stall the vote for a little while. They're probably not going to be changing any minds. We know that the House Republicans are going to advance this bill and move it on to the state Senate next week. This is just part of the process, though. Every bill gets 3 readings. The first reading in a committee, the second reading where lawmakers get a chance to vote on amendments to the bill. They tried to do that on Thursday. Democrats offered a number of amendments that Republicans rejected. This is the third reading of the bill where they come up one by one, making the case for or against this bill. We heard from the bill's author, State Representative Smaltz. Now we're hearing from State Representative Pierce from Bloomington, and I suspect we'll hear from a number of Democrats, and we'll listen in to some of this debate ahead of showing you that final vote as it happened in the House of Representatives on Friday morning.
So the goal of Friday is to get this bill from out of the House so that it can move next week into the Senate. But as you said, there's some other formalities that have to get done on this Friday.
Sure, and we don't know how the state Senate is going to vote on this yet. While it's a fait accompli in the House, the Senate, it's uncertain if they have the votes in the full Senate. It's probably even uncertain if they have all the votes they need in the Senate Elections Committee to get this bill out of a committee. What we're hearing is the Senate's going to go into session at 12:30 on Monday, and then likely a committee hearing after that, perhaps even on Monday afternoon. So it's possible if they don't have the votes, it doesn't even get out of committee in the Senate. But if they do have the votes to get it out of a Senate committee, then it goes to the full Senate later next week as well. And another interesting thing we saw Friday, Democrats had scheduled a rally at the State House Monday with former Senator Joe Donnelly. We just got word that they canceled that event, and I don't know if it's a logistics reason or if if there's some reason why, from what they're hearing with the vote, some reason why they don't want to hold a rally. Perhaps they feel as if holding a rally would have an adverse effect on these senators who are kind of stuck in the middle on this vote. I simply don't know, because we just got word that rally with former Senator Donnelly was canceled as of Friday morning. So we'll try to get some more information about why that was and if that has anything to do with where things stand on the vote or what they're reading in terms of the tea leaves on this vote in the Senate. But it's certainly something we'll keep our eye on here as we move toward Monday and as we watch these proceedings as they played out minute by minute on the House floor Friday morning.
Well, Dan, how about we do this? Let's go to the House floor and see what Representative Matt Pierce is saying. We'll watch this in real time. Let's listen in. Well, 1 second, a little technical difficulty there, everybody. Now let's listen in.
No time for the public to really absorb it and to understand it and to be able to communicate to us what they think about it. And the maps themselves, if you look at it, it goes against some of the most basic principles of map drawing. First of all, the districts are clearly not compact. And I know in 2021, I heard a lot about from that. People, you know, your supporters of the 2021 map were very proud of the compactness of the districts. And I would hear endlessly about the horrible map of 2001, which did have a district that went from West Lafayette down to Paoli, not very defensible. So they said, hey, we don't have these districts, you know, meandering all over the state, just trying to pick up voters from one political party to the other, but not compact here. We're certainly ignoring communities of interest, and nowhere is that more evident than in Marion County, where we're dividing that county up 4 different ways and attaching people in the center of Indianapolis to people along the Ohio River at various points. Those aren't the same communities of interest. Imagine having to be a member of Congress and when considering issues, having to represent communities in the middle of Indianapolis and communities in the rural areas down along the river. That's a really hard thing to do. That's why we think about communities of interest, because you want your representatives to be able to represent your interests and not to be constantly being pulled different directions. And most importantly, it dilutes the minority voting power. Right? You're reducing the voices of many people in Indianapolis. And if this map goes to tape, you're probably going to take away the only African Americans serving in Congress in Indiana and probably reduce overall minority representation in Congress. Important voice is not going to be heard anymore. Maybe a voice you disagree with, maybe you don't like the policies proposed by a person, but he's representing his community and he's got a pretty good community of interest, pretty solid, significant one. And so all of that is thrown aside when you look at these two maps together. And so the sad thing is we don't have apparently enough people. Maybe we'll have barely enough across the hall. We hope so. But there are not enough people standing up and saying, this isn't right. We shouldn't do it. It goes against our values. It reduces the esteem of this very institution. An institution, by the way, which we're all just passing through. You know, some will be here longer than others. With members served as long as 50 years. But at the end of the day, we're just passing through. And it kind of reminds me of that old Boy Scout motto they used to tell me back in my Eagle Scout days, is leave the place better than you found it. We are not leaving the House of Representatives a better place than we found it with a bill like this, with a process like this, with the ends justify the means approach. It's why we should defeat this bill. Now, the other thing that kind of makes me sad is, you know, we often hear from people they're not very happy with their government, they're frustrated with their government, they're complaining about it, and I often tell people, you know, your government is not some inanimate object. It is not some blob out there somewhere. Your government is full of people, and in many cases, people you directly elect. And then those people directly elected choose people to help them to implement their policies. You can have an impact by choosing the people who populate your government. You can change the direction of your government if you become involved in the democratic process, if you don't just say, oh, politics, that's kind of a dirty thing, who wants to get involved with that? If you get involved in your democracy, it can work for you. What do I tell those people when I say your government wants to erase you? They want it to be 9-0. 7-9 is not enough. It's going to undermine people's really their belief in our government. And that's the worst thing of all. because this action today, and if this map actually becomes law, I think there's a danger that events can kind of spiral out of control. I kind of feel like they're already out of control now. I mean, I can tell people are not happy to be here. I can tell a lot of you wish this wasn't happening. And yet we're somehow stuck in this Twilight Zone world where we have to do things we don't really want to do because somebody out in Washington is demanding it. We can't stand up and just say, this is Indiana, we're Hoosiers, we do things differently here. We believe in Hoosier values. We believe in fairness. We believe in even competition. We believe in a level playing field. We don't believe in putting our thumb on the scale to give ourselves an unfair advantage. And in the process, really disenfranchise 40 to 45% of the people in Indiana who tend to vote for Democrats. They'll have no one they can point to out in Congress. You know, all the time I hear that from people. It's like, well, at least we have, you know, Andre Carson or Congressman Ravan, at least out there to say, you know, our views, speak on our behalf, you know, and they wish they had their own member of Congress, but they kind of accepted that, you know, until they got the votes, that's the way it was. And now we're just telling them, you know, don't even try, because we'll just keep adjusting it. So what's going to happen? Imagine if this map passes and becomes law. And we have the midterm elections. And right now, I think there's like a 3 or 4 vote difference between the majorities in Congress tonight. Let's imagine that the Republican Party ends up with a 2-vote majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. And imagine that the political scientists do the analysis and they say, yeah, you know what? The Democrats would be in control of the U.S. House right now, except a handful of states like Indiana passed this map. And that gave them 2 seats they would not otherwise have had. Now imagine for a minute that the shoe were on the other foot. And you looked out and all indications are that your party would control the U.S. House, but because the other party manipulated the maps in a bunch of states, now I'm not in control. What is that going to do to the legitimacy of Congress? You're going to have at least half the country thinking, why do I even listen to those guys? Why should I obey their laws? They're not there legitimately. They got there through this kind of help. They cared about their power more than they cared about the values of democracy. And now I am completely shut out. That's when things get dangerous. When people feel that their government will not respond to them, will ignore them, will not redress their grievances, when that happens, we are in for a rough ride. And we have a chance to avoid that here today. We have a chance to restore people's faith in government, to restore the faith in us, their elected officials. All we need is 51 people out of 100 to stand up and say, you know, I like my party. I hope my party wins. I'm going to fight like crazy for the policies and the values that I think my party embodies. But you know what? I'm going to fight fair. I'm going to fight on a level playing field. I'm going to win the right way, or I'm willing to lose. But I'm going to fight fair. All we need is 51 out of 100. And this whole thing stops right now. And we can say to America, if not the world, in Indiana, things are different. We are Hoosiers. We believe in fairness. We don't believe the ends justify the means. We believe that we should do things the right way. And so I would urge you, with all of my heart, for the sake of this institution, let's turn this from a day of sadness to a day of joy for our democracy.
For discussion on the bill. Representative Jackson. The other yield, he yields.
Good morning, Representative.
Good morning.
Smalls. Forgot to mention your new hairdo. It's nice.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
There's a short list of people that like it.
Okay. Could this act of action as far as this redistricting establish a precedent for redistricting in the future?
Would it establish a precedent for redistricting in the future? I would say yes. I would say that we're making it clear that you can redistrict outside the decennial census.
So, could frequently redistricting undermine public's trust? And if so, how is that concern going to be addressed?
Well, I think we have to follow the rules of the House. We have to follow Indiana law. We have to obey the Constitution and hope that the public trust sees that we are following the rules, we're obeying the Constitution and obeying the law.
Do you think that the public feels we are obeying the law in what we're doing now?
I don't know that I can speak for the public, but I can tell you we're doing our very best to follow our rules and follow our laws and obey the Constitution, not only of Indiana, follow the Constitution of the United States, and pay close attention to precedent set by the Supreme Court of the United States.
You were present in committee hearing. We had upwards of 40 people who came and testified. And of those 40 people who came and testified against the bill, I think there were only 2 who testified in opposition, who testified for the bill. Also, in the last few days, we've had hundreds of people here opposing the bill. And on the one day that people came to support it, I think it was about 15 or 20 people that showed up. Is that not enough to let you know what their feelings are, along with the hundreds and thousands of phone calls and the thousands of petitions?
I think there were 43 people that testified. I took very good notes. I listened to what they had to say. I weighed what they had to say. I weighed what I'd heard elsewhere not in a committee hearing from constituents, and made the best decision that I could.
Thank you. You stated in committee that you've been working on this bill for 4 months. As I look here on the screen here, I only see your name as the author. Was there someone else that worked with you here in the State House on this bill, like a co-authors?
Yeah, I think Representative Zimmerman is a co-author. I'm not sure why it's not up on the screen yet, but he'll be a co-author to this bill.
Thank you. You also spoke about political performances many times. Could that be what you meant when you mentioned to us how you plan to introduce legislation in the upcoming session that's gonna all of a sudden miraculously help those individuals who are currently suffering now with utility bills, with health bills, and with child care?
I think what I said, and I said it in committee, was that I was working on child care legislation that continue to do that. I said, I think that some of the issues that are important to Hoosiers are exactly what you just said, and I'm looking forward to this body doing what it does, come together and try and find solutions that help Hoosiers every day.
Permission to speak.
You're recognized, Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Political performance seems to be the topic of why this bill is here. But in reality, political performance is something that's short-lived. It's something to get that wow effect. It's something to make the public think that what you're doing is good, it's for good government. But as I stand here and I look on both sides of the room, I don't see not one person with a smile on their face. And I haven't seen it since I've been here, since Monday. Okay? I know the people in this chamber. I've worked with you all in committee here on different issues and been out to dinner and other places with you all. You clearly don't want to be here, okay? And I get it. This is the time that normally you're preparing for the biggest holiday of the season, to be home with your families, preparing for your children who are coming home for the holidays and your grandchildren. I get it. I can't tell you how many of you all have said to me, I can't wait to get out of here. I don't want to be here. I can think of other places for me to be. Well, you know, I hear you. But you know what? You have an opportunity to make this right. You have an opportunity to go back home and to tell your family, your constituents, that you did the right thing. Because you know this is not the right thing. You know this is going to do nothing but tear our state apart. You know it. But you know what? It takes a hell of a person to stand up and take responsibility and do the right thing. That is something that you're going to have to deal with between you and whoever your maker is. I cannot guilt you into doing it. That's something you have to do on your own. Everybody's upbringing, I'm sure, was not the same as mine. I was taught to stand up, to speak up, and do the right thing, regardless of what my neighbor, my friend, or another relative of mine said. If it was right, then fine, go along with it, but if it's not, then don't. You see, as we have presented this bill, we've talked about it, and I'm sure you all have talked, my colleagues on the other side, I'm sure you all have talked about it amongst yourselves. But what's troubling to me is not one of you have brought yourself up here to this podium and spoke about it and said, oh, I think it's a wonderful thing here. Not one of you. You may have said it at home, in your closet, in your basement, in the back room where only you heard it, but you have not said it here. You have not said it to your neighbors. You've not said it to any of us. You just come in here and you look solemn like you lost your best friend. Well, you can make a change. You can make that difference. Later on today, you can vote to end it. It does not have to go any further. And I humbly ask you, just do the right thing. Thank you.
For discussion on the bill, Representative Arrington to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. I've been a member of the General Assembly since 2006, 17 years. And from the very first year, and probably every year since, I have been told, vote your district. If you don't, you better have a really good reason. And you all have probably heard the very same thing. So I do listen to my district, and they're telling me loud and clear, vote no on this new map. In fact, maybe it's because I'm on the Elections Committee, I'm hearing from voters all over the state, and they're saying the same thing. My email, my calls, it's all overwhelmingly, I'd say 99.9% is saying vote no on these maps. And it's no wonder they're saying that, because they're getting a message that voters don't matter when they look at this map. They're getting the message that legislators are going to choose their voters, not the other way around. And when you look at that map, look at 21 and the one that's proposed. What a huge difference in the way they look. I can't imagine that any Hoosier would have drawn this new map. And in fact, the author told us it was drawn by some group called I think it was the National Redistricting, or Republican Redistricting Trust, which I've never heard of that before. I wonder how many other people here have heard of that before. These strangers designed this map. Now, look at the 2021, and my district is 5. It's that burgundy, very compact district. Now, my district, well, my county is divided into 2 different congressional districts. Most of the county, or at least most of Muncie, and a good bit of the county is in the, I guess you call it the pink district, the salmon district, 3. Where it goes all the way north up to the Michigan line. The rest of Muncie and the rest of Delaware County goes south all the way to the river. And people, once they saw the map, which was revealed on Monday, my mail started escalating on complaints about this map. And I want to read to you what one of my constituents from Muncie said, because I think it's the essence of what's wrong with this map. The subject line said, "Muncie will succumb to Fort Wayne." And she said, if you vote for redistricting, you obviously do not care what happens to East Central Indiana, which is a depressed area and will only get worse with the redistricting map that has been proposed. Muncie will be reduced further in stature, as Fort Wayne will be the center of our district and a beneficiary of future federal funds. I am sure that the representative for Muncie's district will be from Northeast Indiana. And this person will know nothing about Muncie or care to know. Please vote no on redistricting. And that's exactly what I plan to do. I'd also like to talk about the intensity of feeling, not just from that constituent, from others. I stayed at the Columbia Club last night, and I went down to dinner. I sat by myself at a table close to the bar. There was a whole table full of Republicans over in the corner. And of course, the Columbia Club is a bastion of liberalism. But while I was waiting for my dinner to arrive, I was talking about this bill and what I felt about it. And when I hung up, a man who was a perfect stranger came up to me, and he said, "I agree with you, and I want to make a contribution to your campaign." I hope that every one of you will be thinking about 2026 when you make this vote, because voters, they're angry, they're afraid, and they don't like it, and they want it to be voted down. And I hope that's what you will do. Thank you.
Further discussion?
We are continuing our coverage here on Fox 59 tonight with our coverage here of Dan Spuler and I. There we are. We got a little technical difficulty as we went to black there for just a moment. But Dan, we've been listening to Democrats who of course are opposed to these maps, who want them to just simply go away. They are doing what they can to urge their Republican counterparts in the House to, as they said, make a difference, send a message to Washington that in Indiana we do things differently and we don't just go along with things because in this case the president has asked for a 9-0 map.
Yeah, and we're watching that case be made by Democrat after Democrat. Right now, it's State Representative Alex Burton who's speaking as we recap the minute-by-minute coverage as it happened in the room earlier today in the House chamber. And, you know, this is certainly something we've described as a foregone conclusion. The House voting to pass this bill, but this is part of the process. Every bill gets 3 readings in each chamber, and so the minority party right now making its case why they don't think this bill should be passed by the House and be sent on to the Senate. They know as they get up and make the case for this bill that it's likely to pass in the House. The big question will be what happens to it next week in the state Senate. We just don't know in terms of the math there. You know, we've been hearing, obviously, with about 40 Republicans in the Senate and 10 Democrats, that maybe there's somewhere around a 20-20 split within their own caucus, which would mean the bill could fail 30-20 in the Senate. They need 25 votes plus the lieutenant governor can provide a tie-breaking vote. So we'll see how that plays out next week. We'll also see how it plays out potentially in a Senate committee. That'll be the first test for that bill in the Senate. That could happen as soon as Monday, the bill going to a committee. I was looking at the breakdown of the members of that committee earlier, and I know we'll talk about this a lot more next week as well, but there are some members of the Senate Elections Committee that have, on the Republican side, that have either expressed opposition to the redistricting bill or have expressed concern about it or haven't expressed an opinion one way or the other. So it's not clear yet if they would even have the votes for this bill in the Senate Elections Committee. So we'll wait and see how this plays out next week. That'll be the big test now. And of course, we'll continue to follow all the latest on In Focus as well. Sunday morning, 7:30 on CBS 4, 9:30 on Fox 59. We're going to be talking with our panel about everything we're seeing with this final vote in the House on Friday.
Well, Dan, we are pleased to give everybody this joint coverage from Fox 59 tonight and In Focus Now here on Fox 59 Now and Fox59.com. We're watching this in real time, so we don't know exactly what is happening. We know the plan for Friday is that this vote will take place and this will come out of the House and then potentially go over to the Senate, where, as you just explained, we really don't know what's going to happen over on that side. So more representatives on the Democrat side are speaking right now. We're going to listen back in to more of that at this point bit of debate and encouraging them to really do the only thing they can do with a Republican supermajority is simply ask them not to do this. And that's right now what Representative Alex Burton is doing. Let's listen into what he has to say.
This program would have given students a greater access to pathways into healthcare careers. Legislation passed in this chamber forced them to abandon the project. So while the state claims to champion apprenticeships and innovative work-based learning opportunities, our own policies are blocking Hoosier students from hands-on learning. We are denying young Hoosiers the chance to fill the very jobs we desperately need. The agenda set by Washington, D.C. seems to outweigh the needs of the people here at home. Our current maps were once praised by the people now trying to upend them. But a shift towards a 9-0 map means that we risk the impossible scenario for 9 people to balance the agricultural, manufacturing, transportation, and economic development needs within each congressional district. Redrawing the congressional maps happens after the census, every 10 years. This mid-decade rewrite is being pushed by the same voices who once told people to drink bleach to cure COVID, who encouraged harm against Hoosier legislators, and once referred to 2 Corinthians as 2 Corinthians. We're experiencing an unorthodox attempt to muscle political influence just a couple of weeks out before Christmas. Instead of addressing these very real problems facing Indiana, we're discussing the reworking and redrawing of congressional maps that were once just drawn. While thousands of families go without adequate heat, childcare, food, medicine, and stable housing, this chamber is prioritizing unnecessary and abnormal redistricting attempts that could set a damaging precedent for our future. Hoosiers are watching, many of whom have never really paid attention to politics. They are frustrated and they want action on the real issues. But this chamber is choosing to ignore families, employees, parishioners, classmates, and neighbors for the sake of this blatant power grab. People will remember who put politics over them. These maps punish economic interests of our state by diluting the voices of the very people who drive our economy. To legislators listening, I urge you to listen to your conscience. This is a defining moment. Your vote today will be remembered, and it's not too late to do the responsible thing. I can only imagine the pressure some of you are under, but if no one takes a stand today, then what's next? By supporting redistricting today, what will you have blind allegiance to tomorrow? And as I take my seat, again, I just urge everyone in this body to vote no.
Further discussion, Representative Shackelford to speak on the bill. The author yields.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I just have a couple of questions that I just want to dig into, especially when it comes to the data that was used for this.
Okay.
So one, you had mentioned in committee the Republicans used a third party to obtain the data for the maps. Which company was that, and was it a nonpartisan company?
The organization was the National Republican Redistricting Trust.
Okay, so then I'm assuming it was not nonpartisan.
I think that would be a correct assumption.
Okay. And then I'm interested to know, how did they configure the political, population, and demographic data? Did they use the 2020 census data as a foundation?
Yeah, I think you have to use the 2020 census data, but you also would need to use the past 3 presidential elections, the past 2 federal senatorial elections, and then you would backstop that by checking the Indiana Secretary of State and the Indiana Attorney General's races for the last 2 cycles.
So they used all past data, nothing current?
What I just laid out is what they used.
Okay. So what you just said is they use all old past data, no current data.
Well, there's no current elections. It's something in the future, so you have to look at elections that have happened.
Okay. Interesting. And so I'm assuming the vendor recommended multiple options or map variations. Did you receive more than one option? And if so, why did you choose this option?
I did not. I received this one.
Okay. So you hired, or someone hired a contractor, and usually when you hire a vendor, they give you multiple options. So you're saying that they only sent you one map option.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. And then I'm curious, when the vendor sent you the final report, did the report contain any racial demographic data?
The maps were based purely on political performance.
So I know the maps were, but when you got that report from the vendor, did they give you any demographic data with their report?
The only thing that I saw was purely based on political performance.
So I got that part. But when you received that email, I'm assuming it came by email, because this is a national group. or did they mail it to you?
No, I got it handed to me on paper.
Okay, so they handed it to you in person.
The trust did not. Staff here did. So
Okay.
we worked with the trust, we worked with LSA, like we do on every bill, and worked internally with our staff attorneys.
So who received the final report from the trust?
I'm not aware of any final report. I don't know what that might be. I know that I received the maps.
So all you got in your hand was this map.
Yeah, the maps and then the language in section 7 of 1032 that lists each congressional district by county, township, precinct, and census block.
Okay, now you're saying maps as plural. Does that mean you got more than one map?
No, I think when I say maps plural, I'm talking about the map for the first congressional, the map for the second, and so on.
Oh, so you got a breakdown of the maps by each congressional district.
Yeah, in section 7 of the bill, it's broken out by county, township, precinct, and census block.
So we got that, that's in the bill, but you're saying that when they sent you these maps and they broke it down by each congressional district, they didn't send you any demographic data to go with the congressional districts.
The only thing I'm aware of is these maps being drawn on political performance. That's it.
Okay, very interesting. So, as you stated, this is a time for public review and response. Is that final report that came from the vendor available for public view?
I'm not aware of what report you might be mentioning. I was provided the language in section 7 that talks about counties, talks about townships, precincts, census blocks, and the map that you have with you today.
Okay, now did the vendor send anything to LSA or to your attorneys besides the maps?
I don't know that.
Okay. And then lastly, who paid for this vendor's contract? Was any public funds utilized?
I don't know that. I don't have any idea. I wouldn't be able to guess.
So you have no idea who paid for this?
I do not.
And you have no idea if any public money was utilized?
I have no idea.
Okay, thank you. Permission to speak.
You recognize Ms. Shackelford.
So, as we debate this map, I want to draw your attention to the reality of Indiana's 7th congressional district, represented currently by Congressman Andre Carson. This district includes roughly 750,000 Hoosiers. Fewer than half, about 45.7%, identify as white. About 1/3, 32.5%, are black. Nearly 15% are Hispanic. So a vast majority of residents are people of color. These are communities whose concerns about housing, small business growth, education, and equity should never be treated as optional. What is being considered today goes far beyond routine redistricting. These maps would fragment Indianapolis and divide District 7 across multiple congressional districts without a single centralized anchor. For a capital city that drives much of our state's economic activity, this creates serious challenges. How do we advance federal investment, modernize infrastructure, support small businesses, or strengthen our workforce when no member of Congress is accountable to Indianapolis as a whole? You dilute our urban city priority against suburban and rural needs. A fragmented map makes coordinated progress harder and makes it more difficult for diverse communities to advocate for the resources they need and deserve. There are significant equity implications as well. Indianapolis is one of the most diverse areas in the state, second only to Lake County. Scattering these neighborhoods across districts dilutes our collective voice at a time when representation determines which priorities rise to the top and which communities receive long overdue attention. Implementing sweeping changes mid-cycle outside the standard census process also undermines transparency and public trust. Indianapolis deserves a congressional structure that reflects its demographic reality, supports its economic future, and strengthens democratic participation, not a structure that weakens it. This is not abstract. These are real people whose representation and political weight matter. When we withdraw the map, ignoring the demographic makeup of District 7, we weaken the ability of Black, Latino, immigrant, and multiracial communities to speak with a unified voice in Congress. We move their needs further from accountable federal leadership. My minority, majority, and majority Democrat district will be broken into 3 Republican congressional districts. Now, our urban, struggling neighborhood priorities will have to compete with Indiana's southeastern counties. Most likely, our 3 Republican congressional members will not live, work, or worship in our community. We lose that experience living from our representative, and most likely we have to travel to a rural area to argue our needs. That is why the amendments I offered yesterday were not only reasonable but necessary. A district-specific Voting Rights Act analysis and a racial and ethnic equity impact note are the minimum steps we should take before approving a map of this magnitude. We owe that to the people we serve, and we owe it to Indiana's future. Because this map ignores the demographic reality of the district and fragments communities whose voices must remain strong, I am voting no. I urge my colleagues to view these numbers not as stats, but as the people behind them, and to consider who deserves to be heard in this chamber and in Congress. I am hoping this side of the aisle listen to the words that we are saying, and I am hoping that you take it to heart and vote no on this horrible piece of legislation. Thank you.
Further discussion, Representative Andrade. The author yield, he yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. Representative Schmaltz, we keep hearing that these maps were sent from a national Republican redistricting group?
Trust, yes.
Trust.
Yes.
Once that information was handed down to you, was there any input put into consideration from the people here in the state or from any bipartisan legislative group?
Yeah, so legislative services participated as well, and our staff did.
Okay. What about the input from the public besides the committee hearing that happened on Tuesday?
That's where public comment happens, is in the committee hearings where it happened here on Tuesday, and if this bill does pass, will happen again in the Senate. That's the correct process.
So no input from the public in regards to how their maps are looking to the representation in their districts?
No, I think we all receive input from the public every day. I'm sure your email box and your phone calls that you get, I think we all get those. But the appropriate place for public comment is in a recorded sense is in committee, which happened here Tuesday. And 43 people testify, and will predictably happen if this bill passes in the Senate next week in their committee, which will be a public hearing as well.
So you mentioned that 43 people testified in committee. How many of those were in favor of the maps?
I think 41.
41 out of the 43 people that testified said these are good maps.
Yeah, I believe that's, I think, no, the other way around. Yeah, I think 41 people opposed.
Out of 43 people, 41 were against the maps.
I believe that's right, yes.
So only 2 said these maps favor them and represent them well in D.C.
Yes, that's right.
Only 2?
Yes, in that venue, you're correct, yes.
And since that input was given to the committee, we decided to still move forward with these maps and vote them out of committee without having to say, wait, let's go back and see if we could make these maps fair in representation to the people who are voicing their concern about how this is going to disenfranchise them.
Yeah, I don't know about the other members of the committee and the body of input that they received over time.
Sure.
But yes, if you're only asking the question of the process and how the steps worked, at that public hearing, we had 43 people testify, 41 people opposed, and we moved forward with the bill.
Okay. Thank you. Permission to speak.
You're recognized, Representative Andrade.
Northwest Indiana is my home. It's the community that I have the honor of serving, where I live, where I'm committed. It's where families work hard, where neighbors look out for each other, where people expect a fair shot at having their voices heard. And today, that community is being torn apart. These maps split Northwest Indiana. They cut through long-standing neighborhoods. They divide school districts, economic corridors, cities that are connected in every meaningful way. And all of this is being done for one reason: political gain. We should be honest about what is happening here. These maps were not drawn to strengthen representation or respect communities. They were drawn to strengthen political power. They were drawn to disenfranchise the voices of our Hoosiers who trust us to represent them, not discard them. Hoosiers across our state are struggling to believe the government listens. They see decisions being made out of sight. They see their communities being split without explanation. They see their voices diluted. And then we wonder why public trust erodes year after year. Northwest Indiana has a congressman, Frank Marvan, who represents our district in Washington, D.C. He has stood up for our region, fought for the people who live there. These new maps take that fair representation and put it at risk. It undermines the community that has contributed enormously to our state, and they do it without any justification that serves the people. This is my community. This is where I live. This is where my family gets to call home. No one gets to bully it, not for political advantage, not for convenience, not under the excuse of process. Hoosiers deserve better. They deserve a legislator that values public trust. They deserve districts that reflect real communities. They deserve leaders who will put people before party. This is not the Indiana that I believe in. It is not the Indiana that I know we can be, and Hoosiers do not deserve this. As I close, we all got voted to represent the people in our districts. We come here to do the people's business. And I hope that we are doing the right thing for those Hoosiers who are struggling today, who could barely make their budget, who are struggling to pay the rent. The rising cost of utilities is pushing them to work 2 to 3 jobs. The families who have a child with disability who are hurting because their Medicare cuts have happened to them. I hope we could see beyond what's happening for political gain, and we truly vote what's best for the people that we represent. I will vote no. I stand with Northwest Indiana, and I will continue to fight for every Hoosier who refuses to be silenced. Thank you.
All right, and we've
discussion,
been
Representative
listening in at the State House to representatives as they have a task on their hands here, and that is to get House Bill 1032 passed. But in this Republican supermajority, while they do have the numbers across the board, we don't know yet if they have the numbers to get this passed. But then they also do still have to hear from Democrats, which is what we've been hearing, as Democrats are, of course, encouraging them not to pass this bill. We're here also for our special coverage of Redistricting Indiana with our very own Dan Spuler of In Focus. Our coverage continues throughout the evening, but Dan, this has been something that is one getting national attention, and we normally wouldn't be paying attention to the State House this early.
Yeah, and you're right. They're in session early to deal with this, and it's not just Hoosiers paying attention to this. The White House obviously paying close attention to it. National leaders in Congress paying
Dan,
close
I'm not
attention
hearing
to what's
you.
going to happen.
Are
in
you on
Indiana
mute there?
as well.
Are you on mute, Dan? Because I'm not hearing you. Okay, hang on. Let's press a few buttons over here in the studio. We can see you.
Purdue University.
Give us a little mic check there, Dan.
Hey there, can you hear me now?
I don't know.
Communities
we have lost
that
Dan.
should
We can
be
see
a
you, and I
unified
can,
voice
see
in
that
Congress.
You're talking right now, but we'll
won't.
figure that out here
Families
in
who
just a moment.
share
I'm
the
going
same
to randomly
schools,
talk for just a second while I
the
press a
same
bunch of
main
buttons. This
streets,
is the beauty of being
the
the
same
director
concerns
of
about
the show,
jobs and
as well as
healthcare
the
and their
anchor
children's
of the
future.
show. Sometimes you have to
won't
figure things
have
out
a unified
on the fly. How about now,
voice.
Dan?
Our county
hear me
clerks
now,
will be
as they
working
say?
overtime to
Can't hear
implement
you
these
now.
changes.
I don't know what we did. I don't
A
know
few
what we
from my own
touched,
community
but we've been able to
contacted
hear
me
each
to reach
other,
out. They're really
this
going to have to go
entire
through
time. So,
address by address
yeah,
to
let
make
me
sure
just,
that
play. We
people
can
have
see
the right
very handsome
ballots.
guy there. Let's see.
They'll have to assign thousands of voters
know.
to new precincts.
I don't know what we've touched, but how
send
about
out new
here's
cards
what we're going
and
to do while
update
we're having
polling
this
locations.
technical difficulty.
These maps
we're
are
going
tired
Are you ready to go in to
politics
2026? We'll take
over the
a
needs
quick
of
break and we'll
people.
come back as
Hoosiers
voting
don't want
also is set to
us
happen
in this
on
building
Friday. We're back after this.
dividing any of our communities. By voting for this map, you are